Hello, I'm Jacqui Taylor, and I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farm manager, my mom's a social worker, and the environment which I grew up in, I think, shaped my life and shaped what I wanted to achieve in the different family. So after school, I think I first worked because I didn't have the money. So I started at 17 working. I convinced someone to hire me as a secretary, and then I studied at night. And I studied journalism because I felt it was very important to know how to communicate, and also I studied marketing and then agriculture. Tourism is not necessarily something you have to study. That's just a personal opinion. Tourism is about people, and if you can communicate with people, then you can actually cope pretty well with any tourism situation, no matter what your role. And I went into big business, and what I found was that it was almost a disconnect between the life that I was living and the friends that I had and what I was doing, and it was sort of parallel universes. In 2016, I drove down into a rural town, and most of the youngsters were sitting on the pavement. And I thought, gosh, this is strange. Tuesday, while people at school, and then I stopped the buggy, the car, and I went to go and talk to the young people, and I said, why aren't you at school? Do you not want to go to school? Or just share with me. So I sat down and we had this chat, this long talk, and I found out that 67% of the youth were unemployed in that area. So the youth that was sitting on pavements and in various areas felt there wasn't really a purpose in going to school, because if they went to school and the chances were really that only a third would get employed, then what was the point in the first place? But what I also noticed was generally a lack of self-esteem. A lot of the youth looked down, they didn't look me in the eyes, and there was a general sense of uncomfortable sort of feeling where I knew that there was substance abuse because I could see in people's eyes, and I could also see by the bottles all over littering the streets that there was alcohol abuse. So I said goodbye after I had shared some of my knowledge about where they could actually go to a technical school, maybe learn some technical skills as opposed to geography and history and whatnot. And that evening I sat down and the first thing I started to do was cry, because I just thought, this is not right. The environment that I came from was I was marketing director of a very big hotel, international hotel chain, and I decided then and then that I was actually going to make a difference. And I wouldn't talk about the difference. I would just make the difference by actually showing how to make the difference. So that's when I formed the company. First is Agritourism South Africa, then Agritourism Africa, and Rural Tourism Africa. And Agritourism Africa really is not necessarily farm owners. I have a different view of farming. So anyone who works with the soil is a farmer. You don't have to be a farm owner. So that's the agricultural side. And then there's the rural side. So those are the supporting, basically what I call the supporting industry for the farmers. So it could be anything from agro-processing to just taking the cabbages or whatever the product is to the market. So those two organizations, Agri-Tourism Africa and Rural Tourism Africa, they interlinked. And when I was speaking yesterday to a lot of the youth, what it struck me was that a lot of them have qualifications, that's great, from universities or diplomas from tourism, but they couldn't find jobs. And I think we need to get out of that mindset of looking for a job. I think with COVID and a lot of other things, change has happened, and companies, it's just not the same as it was. And what I suggested was based on experience, because I don't like just talking generally. I prefer to, when I'm talking with young people, I prefer to talk from an example perspective. And so I gave the example of a trip recently to Rwanda. And I stayed with communities for 2 weeks, various communities. And there I began to see how community tourism could work if it focused on caring for people first. You had to care for people first. So it wasn't a case of profit first, it was a case of caring for your community first. And in that process, a cooperative type of system was the best system for that area in Rwanda, because there were women, a lot of the men had gone to Kigali, but there were women who were on the land, and they were growing tea, coffee, vegetables, making crafts. So there was a very strong sense of community amongst women, and they were working together to support the children. And so it was a matter of actually going in and actually facilitating the process is really the word that is most apt in describing what I did, but also making women feel proud of what they were doing. And the fact that everybody was working together, and on a Tuesday evening from 5 to 9, all the women in that community that were part of that cooperative, they all met together, and some people took food, if they didn't have food, they'd take something. And the discussions were around the problems in the community. And it could be anything. It could be one of the naughty children. It could be problems with water. It really was very diverse in its subject matter. But when I left, and I still have a lot of friends there, they said, "Thank you, Jacqui, so much for teaching us that we believe in ourselves, so we have self-confidence, we have self-esteem. We don't have to, when we see tour operators or when we deal with the tourism industry," because I was trying to say be careful of the middleman. Unfortunately, in tourism in the past, has been the one who has benefited from particularly rural tourism, community tourism, agri-tourism. So I said, why don't you establish yourself directly with the end user who is the tourist? And it's so easy now with digital media to actually be able to do that. And their children were all fairly familiar with social media. And I must also give credit to the Rwandan government for actually making it possible for providing the money to set up websites. And you can have a look at the Kivu Belt website and how they work together as a cooperative. So there's a trust, and everybody is getting money from that trust administered by an attorney. And of course, in any cooperative, in any societies, any communities, there are going to be disagreements. But it's important to work together to actually understand what the nature of that agreement is, and then work on how to solve it. Some of the problems cannot be solved because they are what I call more personal or ego related, or it's more of a psychological difference, and that is difficult sometimes to solve. But if everybody works together, then there's more as a whole. For there is a bigger pie, and everybody gets to benefit from that. And that's really what I wanted to encourage in Namibia, because my perception was that the communities, the Namibian government has done a brilliant job since independence of actually involving people in the areas around the national parks. But there are still problems. So there's still animals, and I'm talking about cows, those type of animals, not necessarily wild animals, but there's a conflict that occurs. Now, that conflict doesn't only occur in Namibia, it occurs in all the countries, from Tanzania through to Botswana, and it's how to actually manage that conflict. But I felt, and I did say, that I felt there was too little, there wasn't enough programs and projects and a sincerity of effort in actually wanting to bring the community closer to the tourist. So what I have seen a lot of German tourists, and that's fine, they bring in income, but I'm not talking about paying for luxury safari lodges. I'm not talking about how many jobs tourism creates. That type of thinking, it's past, it's gone, it's not sustainable. I mean, we saw with COVID. You can say, okay, 300 people, for example, were employed in one big hotel. Well, there was no sustainability in that, was there? Because the next day, all those people got retrenched. That's not sustainability. I'm talking about empowerment from a different perspective. So the community actually lays down the laws in which tourism operators or tourism product owners or service operators can do business, because this is your country, this is the country of Namibians, and that is first, and looking after Namibians is first. Looking after tourists and their needs is secondary. So a lot of that frustration I did amongst young people, where they just felt they'd been excluded from that process, and they wanted to know when change was going to come, and when their say and their input would be considered. But having said all of that, I do believe that there has been tremendous, since independence, there has been such an advancement in how people are treated. I just truly believe, though, that maybe a more cooperative way of thinking, as opposed to a capitalist way of thinking, which is what the lodges are about, right? They try to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. I think a community and communal type of approach is needed. And I think the Namibian government needs to be fairly firm on that. The Rwandan government is fairly firm on that, and I think it has benefited the Rwandan people. And I'm not saying it's only Rwanda, that there are other countries also, but it's capitalism is not necessarily the answer for a developing country, particularly from a tourism perspective. You'll have some people just take advantage of other people, and that's simply not the world we should be in. We should have progressed to a different level, and that's my world. I frequently go from community to community. I meet wonderful people. I'm very open-minded. I'm always eager to learn. I mentor a lot of youth, and I can see sometimes a frustration because they would like to own their own homes, have their own transport, and that's what they've been taught. When you get a job in tourism, you are going to have a whole lot of benefits, and they're going to be X, Y, and Z. But when you can't find that job in tourism, you've got to create the job. And you've got to have a different mindset, because it's not a job. I work 7 days a week. It's my passion. I don't feel tired. I don't feel exhausted. I don't feel people are taking my energy. It is a state of mind. And I see people for who they truly are. And I can see a lot of good in people, but capitalists are not my favorite people, to be quite honest. And I think as Africans, we need to take a completely different stance on how to involve the youth. It's not all about going to university or getting a diploma. I'm talking about life skills here. I'm talking about management skills. I'm talking about believing in yourself, mental health, listening, learning to listen also to the elders, and wisdom. I was seeing a very interesting conversation this morning that I was having. That was, I thought, if only you were at the conference, because he spoke about the old days and how everybody had to work together, and how with the spring that no children were allowed to play in the spring, because that would dirty water, and the animals wouldn't be allowed to go near the spring, because that would also dirty the water. But when they sorted a card, it was for community. Everybody got something to eat. And I thought, gosh, where have we gone wrong? That is not happening now. And a lot of these lodges, I see people, the plates are overfull, and they're throwing away all this food. who do people need? They don't need a huge amount of food to be healthy. So I think we just need to revisit how we look at things and what is really important. I think in terms of maybe the advice, and some of the advice I gave yesterday was you've got to stay fit-ish. So I'll make sure that I walk as opposed to take taxis, or because if you are fit and you keep your mind fit, you can actually deal with most things. But if you're not fit, um, and I'm not talking about Olympic fitness, I'm just talking about generally fit. If you're not going to look after your body, you're not going to look after your mind. If you're going to be going through social media and watching, series 302 of something in America, there's absolutely no reference. It means nothing to us now, absolutely nothing. So I just think we should change the way we think. And yes, I am looking forward to people to mentor in Namibia. I see huge potential. I mentor also 3 people in Rwanda, and there's so much potential, but it's got to be the right approach. It's got to be done from having the right principles in mind. And yes, I guess a lot of people, they are maybe envious, or they say, gosh, Jacqui, you've got charisma, or you're so determined, you have so much perseverance, because it's not all happiness. I clash with government a lot. But I put my foot down, and I am not going to be swayed. So if we're going to end up, and I'm going to have my point of view, and government is going to have their point of view, I will respect their view, but I'm not going to change my view if it doesn't feel right. My gut feel says, no, Jacqui. And it can be all the fan trips in the world, and it can be, oh, Jacqui, we'll look after you, you can go to this lodge. So no, but I don't actually want to go to lodges. I don't want tourists. I don't want to meet other tourists. I want to go into communities. I'm quite happy eating protein beans. I don't want all these fancy things. So I think that's maybe governments think that they can buy tourism operators or people in the tourism industry by giving familiar or fam trips. But I'd rather see those fam trips go to Namibians. I'd rather see them go to the youth. And then everything they've been educated on, they can actually see, well, this is how it works. And they can say, this is how it shouldn't work. I think without Namibians owning the tourism industry, it would be like South Africa. And that is, I don't believe South Africa has a good tourism model at all. There's been very little transformation, and the transformation is so insulting that, talking about people who, we've employed 33%. I say, well, who are the 33%? Oh no, cleaners, people who carry suitcases to bedrooms, and I'm thinking, that's not transformation. you know, I tend to be happier when I'm traveling out of South Africa because I'm always confronting government and municipal tourism authorities, and they just have the wrong idea. And it hasn't changed since 1994. There hasn't been transformation on the level that there should have been, and it's because there hasn't been the approach that we're talking about now. So, yeah, that's me.
I was just wondering, maybe you do make reference to this capitalist-oriented. Is there a way, perhaps, to overcome the greedy that possess people, uh, this striving to accumulate even at the expenses of uh, destroying society or taking from society? How should we approach in the context of transformation and change and development? How do we approach such kind of phenomenon, or people who are possessed with greediness and all these things, taking from the society, taking from the resource of society? How do we counter that? Maybe some ideas around that.
Yes, I think the the familial values or the values of a family have disintegrated to a large extent. And I think there are problems there where if you had a strong community or a strong family background where it wasn't just taking out iPads at tables and no one talking to one another, and they're all in the same family, there's been a breakdown in community values. Now, how do you reverse that? You can reverse it, for example, at schools, because now, it's difficult to go backwards, but so how it's possible to go backwards. So how do we go forwards? We need to reintegrate families, we need to reintegrate communities, and we need to learn to listen. And we need to learn to be able to express ourselves. Now, capitalism, and it's interesting, one of the countries that I've been to where it's probably one of the most capitalistic countries that I've ever seen, and that is China, and it's communist. So everyone, so you hear whoever's next door, lives next door to you, you do him in. Whatever it is. So it's this whole, and then I wonder where the communists decide to China went, because it's a one-party state. But that sense of capitalism in China, you literally see it everywhere. So if someone's saying this is 30 rand, the next door, because you don't even have to negotiate. We'll say this is 25 rand. The person next door says 10 rand. And I'm thinking, why are you debasing yourself? Why amongst yourselves? It's not like the different communities here. It's not like people from America or Canada or South Africa or wherever. And I asked a number of Chinese, why is it that bad? And they said, well, really, it was a case of everybody had to take care of themselves. There was famine, there was no food, and it really was I'm going to survive. So it was survival instinct. But it developed past that. And now to get it back into where it should be, China as a caring community, Chinese within China, is going to be a very hard task. The government's going to have to want to do it. That's the first thing. You've asked me a question about, and I want to actually talk about Africa. Because African people by nature, and I am African, we are friendly people. You know, it's because of, yes, colonialism, because of various things, people have been put in what I call different boxes. So all of a sudden, where there was a community, and you can see this in Rwanda, obviously with the genocide, people were living next door to one another, and all of a sudden, there was this divide. And now, the focus in Rwanda is on communities, cooperatives. So cooperatives are very, 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 very important. And that has been brought back by government, Rwandan government, and it's a way to teach people how to actually work together as a community, because that is the only way that people are going to learn to trust one another, but also that they can give back. And there's a day a month where every single Rwandan has to do community service. Every single one. It doesn't matter if you're a politician, it doesn't matter who you are. And that can range from a whole variety of different things. So, yes, I think the Rwandan model of learning to give back is a successful story. I think cooperatives bring them back. If there's a problem with capitalism, bring cooperatives back. Then everybody learns to that if you don't work in a cooperative, your next door neighbor is going to come up to you and say, why aren't you working? Because if we all work, the money that goes into the trust account, we all get a benefit. But now you haven't worked today, so now we actually get to mark it down. You're not going to get as much as the rest of us. Okay? Doesn't mean it puts a damper on capitalism, not at all. Okay? Because people come up with various ideas, and that might be outside of the cooperative, but then you discuss it as a cooperative, you discuss what the other ideas are, the new ideas, and you get outside. There's a lot of American funding in Rwanda for cooperatives, but they're doing that specifically to actually get a sense of community back in Rwanda that was destroyed during the genocide. And I think once we start working together, we will realize that we're all human, we're all actually the same, we all have emotions. You know, we all need to eat. There's no difference. I don't see the difference between politicians and myself, and that's actually why I can go up and say, well, I disagree. And I feel I have a right to actually say that. Because politicians are there because of people in the country. So we actually own them. They don't own us. And I think we have actually, and we should have that right. And we should be able to say, well, maybe there's a different way of thinking about this. And have you thought about approaching or doing things like they do in another country, like Rwanda, without it being taken as a personal insult? But 93% of people in Rwanda have electricity. 93% of Rwanda. Now, that is because the government makes it very easy to do business there. So maybe we should also be looking at that. How easy is it to do business? And when you do business, it's not a case of me coming in and I'm Mr. McDonald's from the United States, and I'm coming in with capitalism, and I own CDs, and that's how I'm going to operate in Rwanda. It's not the way it operates. It's not the way it's going to be operating. So family values have to come back. Respect has to come back. And even if anyone can join. I'm a big believer in sports. It doesn't mean you have to be a highly competitive sports person. But I do believe sports bring communities together. So we need to look at those things that will bring communities together, that will not separate communities. So there's a lot of very simple things that can actually be addressed. And it doesn't cost money. Everybody says, what's going to cost money? It doesn't cost money. What's going to cost money? You know, if we said to the hotel, okay, on a Sunday morning, why don't we have children playing games? Okay? And involve all the communities. Doesn't matter where you live. And I can't believe that all the parking is going to be taken up every single Sunday. That's why bringing the community together. And I bet you it's South Africa, it's like that. You don't even know who your next door neighbor is. And that's why I moved out of the city. I said, no, this is wrong. You don't even greet your next door neighbor. You don't even know what their problems are. But they've all got fancy, like cars and whatever. So I've moved out into a rural community. I live with rural communities. That way I'm more in touch. As everybody says hello. And a lot of farmers, they just say hello when they wave. They don't wave, they just have one finger. It's like the amount of effort. Which I love. Everybody else waves. But yes, that. How can you not know who your neighbor is? How can you not know what their concerns are? Or if they're really struggling? And that's where mental health comes in. That's where suicides come in. I read about this 11-year-old boy. He was bullied at school, and he hung himself from the double bed. It was basically the jacket that he was wearing at school. He hung himself, 11 years old, with someone bullied him. Now, what goes so wrong that no one noticed that? No one noticed that there was bullying going on at the school. Was it just allowed? And so 11-year-olds, yeah, that was it. That was his life. He killed himself. So I think we need to ask a lot of questions. We need to be less afraid of going to approach other people and just saying, hi, how are you today? And listening, not just saying, hi, how are you today? And you're already down the corridor. Listening would be good. And yes, I think Africans must take back Africa for themselves. very, very adamant about that. We must get to tell the stories. Perspective. It comes from the elders. It comes from the wisdom that is passed down. And it's not a case of us disowning what happened from the past. It's not a case of us saying we know better because we went to university. Nonsense. That's not true. We don't know better. So there will be some things we might know better, but I would say political ideologies like communism, capitalism are not the answer. It's been proven. I've travelled a lot. It's seriously not a way forward. In Africa, we need to find our own path forward. What is going to work for us? And it goes through to African storytelling, African filmmaking, not sort of cowboys in America always being portrayed as white people. They weren't. They weren't. I'm not sure where that script came from. They weren't cowboys were not white. They happened to be what they call black Americans. They were the people who were they were the people that had to be super fit going across borders and boundaries and trying to find cattle and very good masters of horse riding, how to ride a horse for kilometers without it collapsing. And if you say that, everybody says, no, but it's all, the cowboys are all white. Hollywood, let's just reclaim and rewrite our own stories, get our own films back, and I truly believe once we make that mental shift of saying, this is rubbish, why do we have to support Manchester United? Why? We need to get the European colonial, we just need to get that out of our minds. When people come here, they need to come with respect. It's not like I heard a German person complaining about not having an espresso this morning. You're in Africa. You're not in Italy. Now, why must you have an espresso? So we just reclaim Africa. And I think I've probably done enough talking, but I'm very passionate about it. But the youth need to do that first. The youth are going to be the leaders. They need to reclaim Africa as theirs and stop seeing America or wherever it is, Germany, England, whatever, as societies where they have it together. They don't have it together. Americans, certainly, I've worked there, they do not have it together. I've worked in the UK, they don't have it together. So let's not hero worship countries that we believe are first world. What is first world? We were here before the first world. So let's rewrite our stories, let's rewrite our education, let's find the role models, and let's work as communities, as cooperatives. It teaches people very, very, very quickly what is important and how to work together. So yeah, that's me.